Gotta take this big pile of books. Alright. No! They're in a precise order. Oh god. So, today I'm going to be doing my very first quarterly book. I almost said book haul. That's not what it is. Quarterly book wrap-up, reading wrap-up, whatever you call it. My hair looks so greasy. That's not grease, that's sweat. Just in case you wanted to know. I think I've only done 1 or 2 monthly wrap-ups in my time on YouTube, and that's because I don't read a lot in a month, I found. At least compared to other people, I really don't read a lot. Like, my quarterly wrap-up is other people's monthly wrap-ups, which really brings down my self-esteem. I am getting into the mindset, though, of reading is for pleasure, it's for fun. You don't have to be so hard on yourself for not reading as much as other people read, but still, I do think of myself as someone who reads a lot, but looking at the numbers, it really doesn't reflect that at all. So, let's go through the books I have read for the past 3 months. I really want to start doing this more because I want to be able to look back on the books I've read, and I haven't been able to do that because I don't do monthly wrap-ups. So hopefully this works. So the first book I read in April was Silver Stars by Michael Grant. Took me a second. I have so much hair. It's just like a blanket on top of my shoulders. I did a whole review for this a few months ago, so I won't go too into it, but it's amazing. This is the sequel to Frontlines by Michael Grant, which it's just an amazing series, and I really, really recommend it, especially if you're not someone who's into historical fiction. I think it's the perfect gateway book to get into the genre. These books take place during World War II, and it's an alternate take on history where women can be drafted and enlisted into World War II, which is really cool, and it's just so good. Even if I didn't do that review, there's not much I can say because it is a sequel, so let me open Goodreads to look at the stars I gave these. A lot of people now aren't very fond of giving star ratings to books, but I personally really like it. I think it's an easy way to look at how much you enjoyed a book, and I gave this one 5 stars. The next book I read in April was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This was, in a word, amazing. I'm sure by now you've heard all about this book. It's everywhere. It was on, it might still be, maybe, I don't know, but it was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list for weeks on end. This follows Star Carter, and she witnesses her best friend get murdered by the police when he did nothing wrong. It's based on the Black Lives Matter movement, and it is, oh my god, it's just amazing. This is almost 500 pages, and I read this in about 4 hours. So, I know I talked a lot about this in my book haul too, and I don't really want to repeat myself, so I'm trying to think of other ways to talk about this. This is something you see in the media all the time, but to be in someone's head while it's happening and to see them go through it is just a completely different story, and this deserves all the praise and hype it's been getting, and I'm so excited for the sequel. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars too. Next, I audiobooked, look at me, audiobooking. I audiobooked Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. I am not a big audiobook person. The only other audiobook I've fully read was Tales from Shadowhunter Academy, and that was only a few novellas in the bind-up that I read by audiobook. But you know, this seemed like the perfect chance to really get into audiobooks because A, it's nonfiction, so it's not like I have to really be ingrained in a story, really focus on a story. And #2, everyone said that Lauren Graham just sounds exactly like Lorelai when she's telling this, and she's so funny and witty and she talks so fast. I was like, okay, I really, really need to read this or audiobook this. Everyone was right. It was amazing. I was so upset when it ended. I didn't know you could see how far you were through an audiobook, so I didn't check on that. And I was so disappointed when it was over. I was not ready for it to end. It's like when you're watching a Netflix show and you're not paying attention to what episode you're on, and then you finish the last episode, you expect it to go to the next one, and it says, other titles you might enjoy. I wanted so much more. I mean, it was so good, but I wanted so much more because I loved it. So I also gave this, I don't know, I'm showing you my phone. I don't have a book to hold up. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars as well, so as you can tell so far, it's been a pretty good quarterly reading months. As someone who has never been into nonfiction, this was a great memoir nonfiction book to get into it, and it did exactly that. I'm now obsessed with memoirs, and I love them, and I want to buy all of them, and I can't stop reading them. If you are a fan of Lauren Graham, or especially a fan of Gilmore Girls, I highly suggest this because she talked about Gilmore Girls so much, she talked about her life so much, I didn't know all the things that she grew up doing. I don't know. It was really cool. Next, I read The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I have been dying to read this for at least a year and a half, 2 years, and I never picked it up. And then finally, right before the show started, I bought it and I loved it. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I promise I am meticulous with my reviewing. Just all of these were really good, okay? Is this considered a classic? I don't know. It's kind of old, but is it a classic? It's also all bent because my mom's reading it. Oh, fun fact. So after I finished this, I wanted to watch The Handmaid's Tale, and my mom was there right next to me, so I said, hey Mom, watch The Handmaid's Tale with me. There's 4 episodes out now. We can just kind of marathon the first 4. And she got 10 times more obsessed with it than I did, and I really liked it, but she got obsessed with it. I didn't end up watching any more episodes, but she full on every week was there watching it and asking me, have you watched The Handmaid's Tale? Have you watched The Handmaid's Tale? When we went to BookCon, all she wanted to do was meet Margaret Atwood just to tell her how great the show was, and I told her, Mom, Margaret Atwood might not appreciate you telling her the show was great. And I'm sure the book is okay too. So she's reading this right now that the season's over and she doesn't know what to do with herself. And it's all bent already. She's only on page 8 and it's already bent. Great. I really, really enjoyed this. It was just one of those things that it's so weird and out there that it's so interesting, but you can totally see it happening. So this follows Offred in the Republic of Gilead, I don't know. And she's a handmaid, and basically handmaids have absolutely no social standing. They're used only for their womb, their uterus. That's all they're good for. The men are all in charge. And it was really scary because it's something that I can totally see happening in the future, which is really scary. But it was just story-wise amazing. It was written so well. I really, really enjoyed this. The show is also really good, but really, really different from the book because obviously the book isn't very long, and they made a show, so it has to be very long. So they changed it a lot, which just kind of threw me off. But book was good. Book was 5 out of 5 stars good. So now going into May. I think this is the first book I read in May. Yeah, so I finished this May 2nd, so this is the first book I read in May. So you already know how many stars I gave this. I reread A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas in the beginning of May, right before ACOWAR came out. All year I had been debating if I wanted to reread this because all throughout this past year I've had an awakening of how much I love rereading books, because when this came out, I didn't like rereading books, and now I love rereading books. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I don't think I've ever heard a bad review of this book. It is just so amazing. Oh my god, it's so amazing. It was so amazing the second time around too. It just makes me so incredibly, just talking about it, it makes me so happy. I love this book. If you didn't know, this is the sequel to A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and the book is now a finished trilogy, even though there's going to be more books. But I don't know if they're like spin-offs because they don't follow the same characters, or it's technically the same series. I don't know. 10 out of 10, you should read this. However, it is a new adult. It is very mature, so just take that into account. Next, I read Who She Was by Stormy Smith. Stormy Smith sent this to me for review, which I did. I did a spoiler-free review. I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it. There were some things that I got caught up on, but I did really enjoy it. I was going back and forth for a while if I should give it like 3.5 or 4 stars. Maybe I'll give it like 3.75 stars because I did really enjoy it. It follows 2 college students who used to be best friends, and then they kind of got separated, and then they find themselves what? They find each other again at college, and just crazy stuff happens. It's really good. I did a whole spoiler-free review on it, and I talked about it more in my book haul, so I won't go too into detail with this because I've talked about it so much I've almost exhausted myself. This was really a fun read. It's really good. Next, I read A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I was trying to time this right so I could read ACOMAF and then immediately read ACOWAR, but then I had to read Who She Was so I could get a review up for Who She Was. So I finished Who She Was real fast in between. I gave ACOWAR 4.5 out of 5 stars. It didn't hit me like A Court of Mist and Fury did. Like, A Court of Mist and Fury came up out of nowhere, and I think it hit everyone like a ton of bricks. No one was expecting it to be as good as it was. So then everyone was so ready for A Court of Wings and Ruin. Everyone was so excited to get the same feelings they did during ACOMAF. Sorry I'm messing with my hair so much. I'm very sweaty. And then it just kind of fell a little flat for me. And I think it did for a few other people too. Maybe it's because I had such high expectations after Akamath. But I mean, I felt the same way with Akatar. I don't remember what I rated that, but it just didn't really do much for me. And then Akamath was like, oh my god. And then this just also didn't really do much for me. It might be because so much happened in A Court of Mist and Fury, and this one was way more political and just things that they had to sort out and things going on. The other thing was how thin the pages were. Look at this. Bible thin. I don't care if I could lift weights with my book. If I have to carry it hunched over with 2 hands because there's so many pages, it's so heavy. I need thick pages. I need normal pages. I felt like I was gonna rip this every time I turned a page. Oh shoot, did I? I didn't get this. Oops. Good thing it's right by my bed now. After ACOWAR, I read Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. Another reread, all about the rereading now. It took me a long time to finish this because I wasn't really feeling it. So I read this pretty late. Again, I wanted to time it perfectly so I could finish this and then immediately go into Lord of Shadows. But I read this kind of late, so I started Lord of Shadows kind of late. What did I give this the first time I read it? I don't remember. I think 5 out of 5 stars, because I really enjoyed this. I loved this book. Okay, I gotta wrap this up. I'm running out of time. 5 out of 5 stars for Lady Midnight. Amazing. What do you expect? Actually, Lord of Shadows isn't really doing it for me so far. I'm still reading this. Kind of putting off finishing it because I've heard some really bad things about the end and I don't want to get there. And lastly, what I read was something I've wanted to read for such a long time, and that is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. I personally like to read more than one book at once, usually about 3, but because it's Lord of Shadows, I really just wanted to read Lord of Shadows by itself, but I was getting so bored because I never wanted to read it and I missed reading. So I picked this up and I finished it in 2 days. Or a day and a half, really. He is such a natural storyteller that when he was telling stories about his childhood, I forgot I was reading a nonfiction. Like, it felt like I was just reading a novel. It's also very dirty because my dog continually stepped on it when I was outside. Awesome. This talks all about his life in South Africa. He shines a light on so much injustice, but then he just talks about his time as a kid, and he was such a bad kid, but it made for really great reading. He's one of my favorite comedians, so I just knew I was gonna love this, and I did love it even more than I thought I would. 5 out of 5 stars for this. 10 out of 10 recommend it. It was an amazing memoir. So these are all the books that I read the past 3 months. I really hope to keep doing these because I like doing quarterly wrap-ups. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!